Alright, so Suicide Squad spoilers, just to get right into them, I'm going to start with the beginning of the movie, really, and the way they showed off the Suicide Squad, because I really enjoyed that. Despite how things kind of went through, really enjoyed the beginning of this movie because it was super simple. It was like, here are the characters, we got our Batman stuff pretty early on, and we actually got to see him later throughout the film as well. But the way they introduced him, where Amanda was like, this is how I got all these people, and this is how I know I can use them, or this is either how I know I can use them or how I locked them up. I love that. I thought that was a simple introduction, but it was really cool, and it's like, we have this guy who's like an insanely great assassin, and he has a cool opening shot where it's like he's talking to the dude, and he's like, "Hey, you pay me before it happens. Now double it and give me $2 million because you're being a little a-hole." And they do it, and he's like, "Thanks." Boom, and he just shoots off the little ricochet and takes the guy out. And it's like, "All right, I'm done," and I'm out of here. And he hops off a building. I was like, that was a great opening shot. And then how she got him, where it's like, "Oh, I just dropped a name. I just dropped his name to a guy who goes out at night," and poof, we get Batman. And I was like, that's a cool way to do it, where she knows no point in me taking this guy on or doing anything extra when I can just be like, "Hey, Batman, this is who Deadshot is," and then they get him, and it's simple. And I like the way they introduced him, him and having issues with, having his daughter live with him and dealing with his ex-wife and stuff. I liked how all that stuff played out. I was like, that, it was simple, and his daughter knows that he does bad things, and he's trying to figure out how to kind of correct that. And of course, he wants to kill Batman, but his daughter gets in the way. And I was like, that was a nice, cool way to introduce his character. And the stuff they did with El Diablo, where it's like, clearly, he burned down his own house, and it was, personally, I thought it was really obvious. It was like, that's his own place, so he gave up. So he did something, and then we get the info later that he actually killed his wife and kids because he lost control. And I was like, I like that, because it was clear from that very first moment when it's like, oh, he gave up. It's obvious that he gave up because something bad happened with his power. So I was like, all right, that's a nice little subtle thing, and they use it later on fairly well. And I thought that was pretty cool. And they skip over some of the other characters that aren't as relevant. But what I really loved was a nice surprise appearance by the Flash, which was really cool because they talk about Captain Boomerang, who, in two different levels, because a lot of people, pretty much nobody knows Captain Boomerang unless maybe you watch the shows, because he has been in Arrow and Flash, and maybe, well, of course, if you read the comics, but for the most part, I think no one knew who Captain Boomerang was. A lot of people also don't care about Jai Courtney in general, so he kind of had two strikes going against him already, which I thought he was fine in the movie. I never had an issue with Jai Courtney, but I know people just, hate Jai Courtney. But, I love the way they did that, and he's working with the guy and stuff, and then he kills him with the boomerang, he takes off, and boom, here comes the Flash, split second. I was kind of hoping, honestly, and maybe clearly I was way too ambitious thinking this, but when they showed the Flash, I was like, it would be super sweet if every person that got caught was caught by a different member of the Justice League, or if they had, because it's clearly after Batman v Superman, so if they had it where, maybe Wonder Woman showed up, or Wonder Woman and Batman showed up to take on, well, they wouldn't need both, but they would know that, if they went to go against, Killer Croc or something, that would have been super sweet to me. I was like, man, I would love to see every member show up. Cyborg couldn't show up, I don't think, but the other people who already, were already in their, super form, that would have been really cool. I guess technically Cyborg could have shown up, because they showed in Batman v Superman, he's already in Cyborg, mode, but I was thinking that, after they show a Flash, I was like, are they going to show everybody or anybody else? And unfortunately, that didn't happen. But that was still really cool. We got to see a little bit more of the Flash, so that was really sweet. We got to see him. I wish we got to see him longer, of course, because the Flash showed up, and I was like, oh, it's just going to be, I thought it was just going to be Batman stopping all of these people. And then it's like, no, we got Batman here, and then boom, here's the Flash. And I was like, that was a cool little cameo that I was not expecting, and it also didn't get spoiled for me, so that was nice. I thought that was a really cool little reference there. And, they go through, we get all our characters, and their introductions I thought were really good. I mentioned, a spoiler-free review, the music I thought was cool that everyone got, their own little music thing, and they did it kind of like they did the trailer where it all matches and stuff. Well, it didn't really match, the movements and stuff, but everyone got, their own set piece of music that matched who they are, or at least what they were doing at that specific moment. So I thought that was pretty cool. I enjoyed the opening and how they did the visuals with the neon stuff on their face. I thought that was pretty cool how they did that, and I kind of wish they did that more a little bit, but it made sense that it was only for the openings and they have all the stats show up, and that was something else. And I know for some of the characters it was meant to just be like that, but in the very first shot when they go to Bel Rev, they have the subtitles, or they have, I guess technically aren't subtitles, but the location in the bottom right corner. I was like, that was terrible because it was freaking black. So I read, I was like, okay, Bel Rev, and it was like top secret. It may have said top secret. I couldn't even read the whole thing because it was black, and they went over like marshlands, and I was like, I couldn't read that. I saw like the first couple of seconds, and I was like, I saw that it said Louisiana, and that was it. And I was like, I read Bel Rev, and Louisiana was just a big word, so I was like, oh, that says Louisiana. And I was like, why did they make the text black? I thought that was so dumb in that opening shot. And then there are other portions where stuff went by too fast, and you would like have to see it multiple times and remember what you saw first so you can look at a different section, or just wait till it's on like Blu-ray and stuff so you can pause it. Because for some of the stuff, it would be like, okay, it's moving along, or it's like, it's only like 3 or 4 things, but you can't even read 3 things because it's just like, boom, it's done. And that's it. And I was like, they couldn't just slow it down like a little bit more so you can see what's happening. Like with Killer Croc was a big one because his was actually moving left to right, and I was like, I can't even read the first word or the full first section because it's just going through. And I guess that was the point, was to make it, you know, crazy and stuff. And I was like, I would like to at least be able to read some of this stuff, but it was so fast for some of those little entrance things. And this is obviously like a minor thing, but it just bugged me a little. I was like, I'd like to read some of that stuff, but it was like they were just kind of flying past it, and you kind of see it if you caught it. Like they were like, you know, 8 things, 10 things to see at one time. It's like, all right, get it on Blu-ray so you can see it, or see it again and try to like speed through it or something. So that annoyed me. It was like a tiny little thing, of course, but that kind of bugged me a little. And you know, like I said, the very first opening thing, I was like, that shouldn't have been black text because it started over water, which made a lot of sense, but it still could have been white text and it would have shown. But it's like, it's black text over water. Like, all right, I can read that. And then like a second later, it's all dark grass. It's like, you can't read that. Like most of it was in the dark grass because I was still trying to read it. I'm like, oh, and it disappeared. Most of the time, it's black on like super dark green. I'm like, why didn't they just make that white text? Like that made no sense to me. So that was a super minor thing. But you know, going through it, still entertaining. Enjoyed the first act. Then they all get out, and we get like, you know, the crappy pep talks and them seeing what Deadshot can do and stuff like that. And it was pretty simple. It was fun going through all that. And it goes through, and we have the mission. And the one thing that I really hated about the mission, even more than the fact that it was kind of like a non-mission, it was just like, oh, this sucks. One of the characters who's supposed to be on the squad turns against them and becomes like the main villain, sort of, because she was, considering what she was doing, which is kind of nothing the whole movie. It's hard to counter as like a big bad villain, to be totally honest. But the way they did that, I thought it makes sense, but it kind of sucks because for one, I thought it was really cool. Enchantress, the visuals they had for her, where it was super creepy and it was like the ring a little bit. I liked that. I thought it was really cool, and she's like teleporting all over the place. And I'd seen the thing before. I think it was like some trailer or whatever. But when she first shows up and they have like the hand grab the doctor's hand and then it flips over and it's hers, I was like, that was really cool. Like as a visual little shot, it's super simple, but it looked amazing to me. I thought that was very cool. And her being able to teleport in like it's black smoke, and she's, you know, basically when she shows up, it's like she's covered in mud again. And I was like, that's really simple. I thought that was cool, and I liked her character because she could jump around, but she was also creepy, and at the same time, she was the loose element. And I was like, I can't wait to see what they do with that. And then she broke free in a couple of seconds. I was like, oh, that sucks, because I thought that was going to be a big element of the film, is that she would break loose later in the movie, especially when everyone gets the chips let out. I thought that would be a big part of her character, is that she'd be forced to do this as Enchantress, and then halfway through or something like that, there would be a scene where she just loses, you know, she finally escapes, and then they have to find a way to save the doctor as well as solve the problem. And maybe that could have been a whole thing for the doctor where she has to save herself almost. And I thought that was going to be really fun. And it was like, no, she took off and saved her brother, and then they're the villains. And then she didn't even look cool anymore because her brother gave her the power, and then she just had like a CG outfit on the whole time. And I was like, oh, that kind of sucks. She looked way sweeter when she's like the creepy looking witch. And then the rest of the movie, she stood there and was like doing this in CG and making a giant portal. And I was like, that kind of sucks. I was glad that she went back when they did like the end fight scene, because I was like, oh, that's cool. Because I just think she looks way better with like the smoke and stuff going around her, instead of like just the. It was basically like she was in like an Egyptian outfit in CG and stuff, and they still had her do like the creepy movements, which I thought looked weird because you could tell it was CG. It wasn't even fully her doing it, and that made it look weirder to me. But I was glad that we did that, that she did that in the end scene, and then the fight itself was pretty simple. I thought it was weird as it happened because it started off really cool because she was teleporting and stuff, and they couldn't really hit her, and they could barely hit her and stuff like that. And then she decided to just fight them with two blades and stop teleporting, which I thought was weird. And then they have it where she just takes all the weapons away anyway at the end, which that in itself I was like, okay, I didn't hate that, and it's one of those things where it's like, well, why would the villain do that? It's been done a billion times where it's like, oh, you had this superpower where it's like, boom, your weapons are gone, but instead you chose to just fight. So I was like, okay, well, it looked cool, so I was kind of fine with it. It didn't exactly make sense, but I was okay with that. And it just ended simply, and then they have, and I mentioned this in the spoiler-free review, this is the part that had, like, too much slow motion to me. Like, the rest of the movie I thought was fine, and then they have the ending thing with the music, and it was a bunch of stuff, and there was stuff in the slow motion part that I liked. Like, the best part was definitely, right before Deadshot pulled the trigger, because he sees his daughter, and he has to break himself out of it at the last second. I love that part, but everything else was, like, too much slow motion, and it was too slow. Excuse me. It was too slow, and it's like, oh, he threw the gun, and the music's like super loud, and it's playing, and it's, she throws the gun in slow motion, he catches it in slow motion, Croc throws the bomb in slow motion. This was like maybe a 30-second scene, and it felt like 2 minutes long or something, and I was like, that just feels too long for her, especially because she threw the gun. Like, honestly, if she just tossed the gun and grabbed it, and then it went into slow motion after that because his daughter showed up and he was like stuck, that I think would have been better, because her throwing the gun in slow motion, I was like, that didn't seem like it needed to be in slow motion. I know it's still the last thing, like, she throws the gun as the final act. I was like, that seems like it doesn't need to be in slow motion. She could have thrown it, and then he catches it, and as he aims, it goes into slow motion, and then he sees his daughter there. And I felt that would have been better, because that would have cut it down like half the time, because I felt like it held on her throwing that gun way too long. So I thought that was really weird. But I like that specific little moment when he's like looking at his daughter and all the water's coming down and stuff, and he has to like break himself out of it to pull the trigger. That I thought was great. I was like, that looks cool. But I felt it just lasted way too long. I felt like it was seriously a minute long, and I felt it could have been like less than half that time. But it probably wasn't even, I don't know, I feel like it may have actually been close to a minute, and it could have been like maybe 25 seconds, almost 30, not even 30 full seconds, but it felt like a full minute. It may have been longer, because they really held on Harley for a while, and then, the gun floating at him in slow motion, and he's putting his hand up and stuff like that, and I was like, I get, it looked cool because he's catching the gun in slow motion, and it's raining, so of course it has to be in slow motion. But I was like, he couldn't have just caught the gun, and then, like I said, as he turns, it starts to go in slow motion because his daughter's there. But that was just me. That was a weird issue I had with it. Before that, we have big character death in El Diablo, who goes like full El Diablo mode, which I thought was freaking amazing when he did that. Kind of comes out of nowhere for sure, and I feel like they did a little bit of a hint at it early on in the movie when I think it's when he's talking to Captain Boomerang, and he's like, I don't use my powers or whatever, and he makes like this, it looks like a face in fire, and I was like, oh, I thought it was weird. I was like, why do you make a face, out of fire? Like, he could have just had like fire go across. And that was something else I loved. I loved the way they used his powers, where he could like make words, and when they showed like the full footage of him in the prison yard, and he has like a fiery crown and stuff, I was like, I like the way they use his fire powers, and his powers were like insane. Like when he uses it in the building and like torches like 2 floors and stuff, and he's just like, blowing fire out. I thought it was really cool, and it really sucked that he died at the end, to be totally honest, and he goes like, full crazy mode. And honestly, I didn't think he died because they killed Slipknot off so early in the movie, and that scene also didn't make sense 100% to me either, because Rick Flag tells his people to hold their fire, and I guess it was because he was going to hit the button to kill him without wasting bullets, I guess, but I was like, I thought he told them that because he didn't want to kill him off already. Like, we need these people, why kill him off? That kind of freaked me out. I didn't know the thing was coming on. But he did that, and then he lets him go up, and he's like beep and kills him. I was like, why didn't he just let them shoot him? Because like they're all marksmen. I'm pretty sure he could have just done it himself. Like boom, I just shot him in the head instead of like hold your fire, let me push this button. But I guess he also had to show them like no, there are really bombs in your neck. But I also thought they would do something like here's a warning to be like no, there are really bombs in your neck, because the whole thing was Captain Boomerang convinced them that they were just playing mind games, and I thought it would be like oh they all lit up or something like that. And that would kind of warn them, like, no, there are actually little bombs implanted in your heads, for real. And then he'd at least be in like 10 more minutes of the movie or something. But it was like, nope, let's just kill him off. And I thought that would be it. I thought it was going to be, oh, that's their thing. Because it's the Suicide Squad. Someone does die in the Suicide Squad. That's the point. So yeah, I thought they killed him off to be like, alright, we got our quota. Everyone else is fine. So I was actually surprised when they killed El Diablo at the end. And it really sucked because I thought he was doing it, going like crazy, I guess full Diablo mode, I guess. And it looked sweet, and it was like just the fiery skeleton and stuff. And I thought it was cool. They didn't do a lot of great, or any real lead up to it. Like, it would have been cool if he kind of lost control early on, or like not as crazy, but like a little closer, and we got to see something like somewhat formed, because it was a full skeleton. So it would have been cool if we saw like an image of a skeleton seem like it was about to form on him, and then it disappeared when he calmed down. They're like, okay, that's interesting. And I think they did do it somewhere early on. I feel like there was something I saw where they did do the face thing early on, like not just when he did the fire. I felt like there was I think it was like a 2-second scene that was super fast, and I believe they did show a part of the skull starting to form around him. But I could be wrong. Like, I don't really remember, because it was, if they did that, it was such a quick scene that it seemed like it came out of nowhere. And I was like, when I was watching it, I just, it's cool to me. I'm like, whatever. It's probably in the comics. I would assume it is. And if not, then that's a cool addition, to be totally honest. But I thought it was a cool way to do that, where he's able to at least fight half of the main villains, the actual main villain, really, because Enchantress, like I said, I hardly count her as the main villain. Really, her brother was the main villain that they dealt with, and she just happened to be there because they didn't kill her first. But I thought that was cool, and the action I thought was good, outside of the first fight scene where you couldn't really see much because it was so dark to me. But the way they ended that first fight scene was sweet, with Deadshot. Like, he just gets up on the car and he's just shooting everything as they're charging at him. That was a great first ending to a first fight scene. The rest of it was like, it's super dark, it's a little hard to see. The slow motion shots during those scenes were well done because they were quick, but that also helped me see stuff. I was like, okay, I can actually see what's happening in this slow motion shot. So that I thought was enjoyable. The fight out that they had like in the office building, I thought that was fine. And that this is the one that's in the trailer, so I felt like I saw that a lot because there wasn't much to see. It was really a lot of shooting. There isn't a ton of hand-to-hand stuff. It's all like Harley doing hand-to-hand. And with Killer Croc, he basically just throws everybody, so it's like there's not admittedly much to see there. So I kind of felt like I saw most of that fight from the trailer, which I feel like we really did for the that office fight scene for sure. But it was still fun. I thought it was okay. And then just the way they kind of ended out the story, and everyone goes back and they get really Deadshot kind of gets his thing where he spends time with his daughter and stuff, and it was simple. And then they have the little mid-credit scene where Bruce Wayne is talking with Amanda Waller, and he's kind of helping her stay protected, and so that way, he's helping her stay protected because she gets him the extra information on the Justice League. So nice simple way to lead into that. It's like, hey, I need info on these people. I was curious why the Enchantress was still in there, because I thought it was just going to be the Justice League file. But he went from the Enchantress to Aquaman, and then it went to Flash, or maybe it was Flash and then Aquaman. But I was like, oh, I thought he was going to have this whole file, and it was going to be all of the Suicide Squad, and then it would get to the Justice League. But it was like, nope, one person from the Suicide Squad, and then exactly what I thought. So I don't know if that was supposed to be like a little thing to throw us off for like half a second, where it's like, oh, this is for the... So he knows exactly who everyone is from the Suicide Squad, I guess. And then it goes to the Justice League. I'm like, that's what I thought it was going to be. And then it just made it weird that he still needed a picture of the Enchantress. So I don't know what the point of that was. Like I said, if it was meant to be like for a half a second, it throws you off a little. I was like, that's exactly what I thought it was going to be. The next movie is Wonder Woman, but timeline-wise, the next movie is Justice League. So obviously he wanted more information on the Justice League. That's exactly what I figured. So I thought that was weird. I was like, I don't know why they put her picture in there unless it was meant to be like once again, even if it's meant to throw you off, if it's meant to throw you off for half a second, there's no point in throwing me off. It's half a second. But it was a simple, very simple little scene, but they do reveal that Amanda Waller knows that he's Batman. I thought that was a cool thing. Everybody knows he's Batman anyway, apparently, if you saw Batman v Superman. But I thought that was a cool thing. It was like, okay, Amanda Waller knows that he's Batman. And he knows about the Suicide Squad, and he's like, you should stop doing that because me and my friends are going to start taking care of it because we'll be all the good guys. So I thought that was a cool way to kind of round things out. But overall, simple movie. Had its issues, and I actually didn't get to it like I thought I would going into some of the stuff with the stereotypes with like Deadshot and stuff like that, but it's certainly there. Like, my camera's unfortunately going to cut off before I can get into all that, but I talk more about it in my spoiler-free review if you haven't checked that out. But it's certainly there. Like, there's stuff. Oh, I do want to mention this. If I don't get to anything as far as the stuff that bothered me about how they kind of made the character stereotypes, Killer Croc that was the worst like black stereotype ever. And the reason it was bad, like, he had the stereotypical black dialogue where he'd say certain words and it's like, oh, it's improper English and stuff like that, where it's like, clearly it's done that way because he's supposed to be black and stuff. The biggest issue was the fact that it was like, that was like some 2002 type racism where it was like, what do you guys want? And his answer was, I want BET because he's the black guy. And that was the biggest issue I had. Like, the whole thing, like, despite what they had where, and my girlfriend mentioned this is a big issue for her, is that like El Diablo is never really called Diablo or by his normal name. That he's always referred to as SA or Homeboy, and that didn't really bother me, to be totally honest. And I don't know if that's because I'm not in that world, but I didn't think that was that big of a deal because I felt like, I mean, I guess technically they did know each other's names. I kind of felt like they didn't really, because they only ever say Harley's name and Deadshot. And maybe that's just because those are the two, famous actors. Nobody else gets named, and Rick Flag. But I feel like they never say anybody else's name, and Katana. And they reference their actual name, I think, one time in the whole movie. Which I guess makes sense because she wasn't shown to be super important. But that was another thing. The fact that she was speaking in Japanese the whole movie, and she understood English, but I guess she didn't speak English, so it just made it weird. It was like, why is she speaking Japanese the whole movie? And it's like, why did they do that? Like, clearly she understands English. And I know that doesn't mean you can speak it, but as a character from the comic books, I'm pretty sure Katana speaks English. Just because she's Japanese doesn't mean she doesn't speak English. So I didn't understand why they made it that way. But yeah, Killer Croc was my big thing, because it was like, what do you guys want? They have Deadshot. He's like, I want to see my daughter and stuff like that. And I don't really remember what anybody else asked for. Harley asked for Espresso. And then Killer Croc is like, I want BET. It was just like, that's what they did with his character. So that was all the race stuff. They went 2002 racism where the black guy wants BET. It's just like, wow, nobody wants BET. Like, black people don't like BET. Like, it's not, They censor ass on BET. That's why nobody watches BET. Seriously, if you don't know that, that's what they do. And it's not all music videos. I know less music videos than it used to be, really. So it was like the stereotypical thing that he wanted BET because he was black. And as he's watching it, it's just girls shaking their butts, which you could totally get from porn, and it's way better.